was kind of amazing, and it had a sense of originality about it, and it took its time. It was confident, it was really bold.
Something insane happens, and then it just smokes crack halfway through and goes to hell.
We got it. We knew. What did they say on Twitter? We knew what the assignment was.
Just fucking say it. Don't you swear at me, you little shits. Don't you ever raise your voice at me. I am your mother.
I've made a lot of movies, and I don't think I've ever worked on anything that's had this much kind of buzz and energy vibe around it.
Ari said that one time, he's like, I just have all this sickness inside me, and I want to put it into everybody else. And I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah, I just want to poison people's brains.
Those moments where you feel that the film is working on the audience, and it's palpable. I had never experienced anything like it before, but it's addictive. I want to do it again.
In the name of the Satan, the Lucifer, and the unholy spirit, may he continue to do it again and again. Hi, pleasure to have you. My name is Kylie, otherwise known as Haunted Hippie or the Antichrist. If you're feeling fruity and fun, be a doll, join my cult, click subscribe. We talk about all things horror on this channel, so also click the like button and the notification bell, that way you never miss the next video. It also lets me know that you want to see more deep dives just like this. Can you believe that it has been 6 years since Ari Aster shocked the world with Hereditary? I was 18 when this movie came out, and now it's time to reflect on it, much like I'm reflecting on all of my childhood traumas. A few months ago, I released a deep dive on Midsommar, and this has been a highly requested video ever since, so I'm finally here to deliver. And also, fabulously, in this shirt, if I might add, thank you to my subscriber Lexius, who sent me this really cool Hereditary shirt. So many colors, so fun. But I think the back is my favorite. See, look, it's the tree house. Anyway, I'm gonna walk you through the background on Hereditary, including a little bit about Ari Aster and then the inception of the film. Then we'll talk about pitching the script, casting, and I have a ton of on-set stories to share. More specifically, I'm gonna talk about some of the most traumatizing moments of the film and how they were created. Then we'll talk themes, how the cast interprets the movie, and also the effect that making this movie had on them. Finally, we'll talk about the release of this movie and the reception, both broadly and critically. If that all sounds good to you, sit back, grab a drink, grab a snack, and let's dive in. Let's start with our lovely little weirdo, Ari Aster. He was born in 1986 in New York, New York, making him currently 38 years old and I believe 31 at the time of shooting this film. Prior to that, he studied at AFI, and his thesis film is generally described as something that people wish they hadn't seen. The Strange Thing About the Johnsons follows a man trapped in an abusive relationship with his son, which premiered at the Slamdance Film Festival and shortly leaked online, where it went viral. For better and for worse, I can't really say that I'm better off for having seen it, but you can't deny its impact. It's a highly unique film, and it obviously displays technical competence. It's no wonder why Ari Aster continued to team up with the same DP from that short, but first he had to write the film. In my past deep dive of Beau is Afraid, I included interviews where Ari Aster kind of disparages the horror genre, and he claims that he only made Hereditary first because he knew that he could get a horror movie funded. At that time, I think that he had like 7 or 8 feature film scripts that he was trying to get made. But since we've been over that already, I do want to jump into some of the inspirations for Hereditary.
I've said this before, but I feel like there is this complacency that comes with watching horror films. People know the formulas, they know the tropes, and it becomes like a type of comfort food. It's satisfying to see a film do exactly what you're expecting it to do. It creates, passive viewers. And so I'm hoping that the film honors certain traditions while at the same time upending them.
Upend them he did. He was tackling themes about inheriting family trauma and how a family unit handles grief. He also can't recall how the idea came to him because it didn't really. It came to him in imagery and set pieces, so then he wrote the story around that. From there, he was interested in making a movie like Rosemary's Baby, a patient, character-driven drama that actually scared people. He described being disappointed in horror throughout the past several decades, and he longed for the horror movies that actually scared him as a kid. This includes an interest in Japanese ghost movies and also movies from the 60s like The Innocents and The Haunting. He also drew inspiration from The Shining to create the atmosphere of Hereditary. But one thing that he was especially obsessed with is the concept of artifice. One of the most referenced movies in Hereditary interviews is The Cook, His Wife, Her Lover, The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. In this movie, there is a churlish mobster named Albert Spica. He acquires an upscale French restaurant in London and dines there nightly, effectively scaring off the clientele with his bad manners. His wife, Georgina, is especially disgusted by him and soon begins an affair with another restaurant guest. Despite their efforts to keep it a secret, however, Spica finds out about their trysts and he plans to exact a terrible revenge. Maybe you noticed, but that is not a horror movie. Aster says that director Peter Greenaway has a natural knack for capturing artifice. this, which is deeply uncomfortable to him. Hence why that's such a recurring motif in Hereditary and why he showed that film to the cast before production.
But I feel like there is this trend among domestic tragedies and domestic dramas, especially in the States, in America. People suffer a loss and then their lives are thrown into crisis and things get very tumultuous for a while and things get very hairy, but then ultimately their bonds are strengthened and everybody's going to be okay. And there's nothing inherently false about that. I guess, I wanted to make a film where, well, it doesn't always happen that way. Some people are taken down and some people don't recover.
Another reason why he put this story through the lens of horror is because he said that what can be a deterrent in one genre, like drama, will become valuable in horror. Like the shock value of our lead character sawing her own head off and basically everybody dying at the end. They don't look upon that too kindly in the drama genre, but Aster actually said that sometimes he got so caught up in all of the details of the drama in Hereditary that he forgot that he was making a horror film. Maybe because another source of inspiration for him was his own family. He doesn't share any specifics, but he just says that they went through a really rough patch and they came out the other side of it thinking that they were cursed. Hereditary was the answer to, well, what if we actually were? But a common misconception that I see about basically every horror director besides Jordan Peele is that they're some kind of freak. I think that Jordan Peele gets a pass because he was so established in comedy before. But especially with journalists, it just irks me.
I have Ari Aster, the writer and director, with me right here. Hi, Ari.
Hi.
I have to say, when I came out of that film yesterday, I said to my producer, Frank, I said, the first question I want to ask him is, like, are you okay? Is everything all right with you?
I'm all right.
Boo, boring. Stop asking great horror directors if they're okay, if they need therapy. It's just bad journalism. I don't really hate to burst the bubble here, but Wes Craven was like this huge sweetheart. John Carpenter is kind of a grumpy bastard, but he is described by those in the industry as like the best Godfather-like producer you could ask for. And also seems like a fine fellow to play video games with or smoke a joint with. And Ari Aster will surprise you too.
My mom's this really brilliant poet, and my dad's a jazz drummer who used to be an R&B drummer. They've always been extremely supportive of me and encouraging, and I think in many ways that's why I'm able to make films this dark, is because I don't feel like I'd be disappointing anybody.
Right.
We'll get more into the cast in a minute, but according to all of them, he was really sweet and lovely to work with. Just a few more tidbits about the creation of the script, and then we'll get into casting. One of the most fascinating things to me personally about Aster's movies are the scores. When writing this script, Aster was listening constantly to the music of Colin Stetson, who is most well known for playing the saxophone, but he also composes music for movies. It got to the point that he could not separate what he was writing from that music, and so he got Stetson to do the music for Hereditary. I just think that's so cool because music is everything to me. Now moving on to pitching, maybe it's time to put that tinfoil hat back on. I hate to fuel conspiracies that Aster might potentially secretly hate the horror genre, but let's look into how he pitched the film.
Is it a horror movie?
Well, yes, it is. But, even while I was pitching it, trying to get financing, I was kind of careful not to describe it as one. The way I was describing it was as a family tragedy that curdles into a nightmare.
I was just kidding. Let's take off the tinfoil hat for now. Just put it over there. It's just that a lot of people that have made iconic horror films have this tendency to undermine the genre. Even Alex Wolff will lift up Hereditary by talking down on the modern state of horror. I just can't be the only one that finds that weird, right? Especially, like I said, when you look at the interviews that Ari did for Beau is Afraid, he really disparages the genre. And who do you think is watching these interviews? It's the horror fans. And yes, this will come up again. We will get to the bottom of this. For now, let's talk about the iconic cast for this film. Oddly, Gabriel Byrne didn't really do any press for this movie, but his IMDb page indicates he was booked and busy around that time, so I can't blame him. So let's just talk about our girl Toni Collette. I can't wait anymore. Ari had been a fan of hers since she was 19 or 20. I think he referenced The Pallbearer. He also said that she is one of our most reliable actors, but she easily could have passed on this role.
I had said to my agent, I don't want to do anything intense or heavy. I had done quite a bit of that and I just wanted to do comedies and have fun. And then he sent this to me and I was like, screw you.
After she read the script, Ari and Toni met for lunch, and that was it. She was in. Thank God that Aster could provide the right conditions for her to agree to this project, because I can't see anybody else tackling it the way that she did. She describes it as a luxury to have such a wonderful script and to have such a meticulous director that no matter what question she approached him with, he would always have the answers. I think Florence Pugh said the exact same thing while I was doing my Midsommar research. There was a similar special attention paid to the younger actors, but let's first talk about their casting. Millie Shapiro is another interesting case case where people think she's gonna be weird or stunted and then get surprised by her insight. She was on Broadway and won a Tony at the age of 12 after starring in Matilda. Can we give her a little credit? Hereditary was actually her first feature. She had always wanted to make a horror film, and she was excited for every facet of this project.
Well, I got the audition from my manager, and I've always wanted to be in a horror movie because I love watching horror movies. And so I got a call back and I was really excited. And then after that, I got director's meeting, so I got to meet Ari, and that was really cool. And then a couple weeks later, I heard I got the part.
She's just an amazing actress. She's such a good actress that it doesn't feel that Charlie is being played by anybody. It feels like we found Charlie.
The crew was pretty concerned about having a 14, 15-year-old engaging in such heavy material, but she was stoked. She also said that she had a mixture of nerves and excitement about being on set for the first time, but that ultimately it ended up feeling like home. I'm not sure how though, because once we get to the on-set stories, it sounds kind of grim. Alex Wolff does say that she kind of maintained the balance of energy on set and kept things from getting too dark, which just kind of seems like a lot to put on a 14-year-old. But also when you're that age and you don't really have any concept of mortality and you're just excited to be on set, I get it. And speaking of Alex Wolff, his interviews are fun. Let's take a look.
Yeah, well, I read the script about 6 months or maybe a year before I went into audition for the first time. I just happened to get a hold of the script, and I heard it was A24, and you know, they can do no wrong, so I wanted to read it immediately, and I didn't quite know how much of a horror movie it was. I knew it was a family drama, and I knew there was some darker elements, but I didn't really know. In the beginning, I was just thinking, this is just so well written. It's just so brilliantly written. Everybody's talking like people, and they're talking over each other. It's a really special script, and I just knew I had to be part of it. If I had to kill people, or I had to, you know, murder anyone to get the part, or, you know, hunt Ari down, I was going to do that.
I can only dream of an actor someday being willing to commit murder just to work with me because my writing is that good, you know? I also love that Alex Wolff is a horror fan. He mentioned that he loved German horror movies like Goodnight Mommy. He also loves Halloween, Rosemary's Baby, The Babadook. Like, he's got taste. Another fun fact about this casting ensemble is that Gabriel Byrne had played Alex Wolff's father in an HBO show called Treatment. And Alex had gone to school with Millie, and so he and a few other members of the cast were pretty well acquainted. The fact that he was not familiar with Tony before shooting actually kind of helped their chemistry, or lack thereof, you know, the distance between the characters, but they still had some work to do to prep for Hereditary. Now we're getting into pre-production for real, and the way that they decided to build chemistry between the sibling characters is so interesting. And here's a story of one such example.
We actually did a bunch of stuff together beforehand in character. We went on like 4 or 5 outings to just complete a random task, and we do them completely in character, and it lasts like an hour or 2, and that really helped develop the relationship.
She's a huge pain in the ass. That was the whole thing, was that she, you know, she was going to be completely silent, and he would tell us to, okay, go to this like Burger King that's like 30 minutes away, and you have to walk there. And I was like, oh my God, and we would never really get lost because we don't know Utah, so I'd have to hold her hand, cross the street, and be like, okay, Jesus, where are we? And I have to do that, and she wouldn't help me at all. And then we'd be at a restaurant, I'd be like, oh, okay, what do you want? She would just look at the menu. I'm like, okay, Charlie, what do you want? What do you want? And then suddenly you start to have these resentments because you're like, sorry, and you're apologizing on behalf of her. Automatically you have that sort of like, oh, my little sister, and all these different things. But then we have this intimacy because we're holding hands crossing the street. And I mean, that stuff can just be invaluable to this kind of a movie.
When Aster is asked about how he directed children in such a difficult project, he says that he didn't really have to do much work there. They were game and understood the material, and obviously he set them up well with his very unusual prep methods. He also prepped well in terms of literally everything. According to Toni Collette, he handpicked not just every cast member, but also all of the crew. They also determined that it was going to be too expensive to shoot on location because of Ari Aster's very specific vision, so they had to build the entire house on a soundstage. Not only the entire house set, but then that had to be recreated in miniatures. They were going for that dollhouse aesthetic to capture the artificial tone that Aster was ultra focused on. The production designer also did heavy research on the demon Payman and pagan rituals to develop what everything would look like. Unfortunately, because of the intense detail, the time crunch on the miniatures was very real. They would be coming in on the day that they had to shoot them, and so they pushed that to the end of the shooting schedule. And unfortunately, some of the miniatures were cut from the film entirely, never to be seen. On a happier note, it's time to discuss the behind-the-scenes stories about some of the most traumatic scenes ever put to film. But first, let's set the stage with how Alex Wolff conducted himself during the entirety of the shoot.
I didn't talk to him as Alex from the first day of shooting to the last.
And you'll be asleep from set
Thank you, Peter.
Roll it up. And on the last day of shooting, he introduced himself to the whole crew as Alex for the first time. It was like a dangerous level of commitment.
This is a rare case of me being on board with method acting because until I did this research, I had never heard about him doing this. It's not like Jared Leto sending his fellow castmates dead rats on the set of Suicide Squad. That's purely freak behavior. I don't encourage that. On Hereditary, though, they had to maintain this really bleak atmosphere while they were shooting. That's how they maintained tone, and I don't think the film would have worked otherwise. And I was amazed to find out some of the ways that they accomplished this, including a story involving none other than Kendrick Lamar.
I mostly listened to Colin Stetson, the guy who did the music for the movie, in my headphones before we started, but this one day I was really listening to Kendrick Lamar's new album, Damn, and I was listening to the song XXX, and it like kicks in this really hard beat. So I was blasting it, and I was really nervous, and he was sitting at the monitor really nervous, and I came over, I put a headphone in his ear, we were both sitting there, I pressed play, and it was like, and it plays so hard, and we both went like this, and he was like, getting my heart racing. We both took it out, I got in my position, I was fired up, he was fired up, he's like, all right, action. We just got our confidence, and that was a really good moment. I was like, dude, we're so in sync.
I don't know why that's such a hilarious thing to imagine because it's totally valid. Who among us hasn't utilized the energy of Kendrick Lamar to finish crushing a set at the gym or to climb up that bitch of a hill on a hike? I just never thought of using his music to maintain the energy of such a bleak set. I love it. Now let's go roughly in order with some other on-set stories, starting with one of my personal favorite scenes, the grievance group. Not only does this scene demand such a measured performance and monologue by Toni Collette, but they started shooting it at 2 a.m. I don't know about other sets, but the ones that I have worked on, 2 a.m. is around the time when people start really hating their lives. Between like 2 and 4 a.m. is when your body starts screaming at you, like, why are you working right now? What did I ever do to you? And then for some reason, you kind of forget what it feels like, so then you sign on to do another horror movie that almost exclusively has night shoots. Anyway, what made shooting this scene even more uncomfortable is that Ari and Toni had different ideas about the scene, according to her, though because they didn't see eye to eye, this made her uncomfortable, which ultimately helped the scene. It's a scene that I feel like is a little bit overlooked because people generally favor her big blow up at the dinner table, which I understand, but I've had a little bit of acting experience myself, and for whatever reason, maybe it's just like a preference on how I like to cast myself and how I've been cast, I find normal dialogue so much harder than acting really weird or blowing up. I was just on set for Stevie Emerson and he was like, can you be super weird and gross? And I was like, say less. But then I had to improvise flirting with my scene partner and I was like, not because he was unattractive or weird, but flirting and being normal, not my strong suits. Different strokes for different folks, but for me, it's just the fact that this monologue was captured in a oneer with such precise and controlled emotion, it amazes me. But now, maybe for the moment that you've all been waiting for, let's talk about the pole scene.
There was definitely like a heavy atmosphere on set that day. Everyone was really anxious about getting it perfect. I was really anxious myself.
Was it exhausting?
It was. I remember like sleeping for a very long time afterwards, and I always wake up really early, and I didn't wake up till like 3 the next day.
And the complete opposite, I remember not sleeping at all that night, just being up, traumatized.
Believe it or not, this was Millie's favorite scene to shoot because she had never done a stunt before. She says that she enjoys being challenged, and she compared shooting this scene to being on a roller coaster. I wish that there was a more intensive step-by-step featurette that detailed how they accomplished that shot, but from what I can gather, Millie was strapped in with a harness, but was actually in a moving car going about 25 to 30 miles per hour and sticking her body out the window. Then, of course, movie magic, and the grossest piece of art, decapitated head sculpture ever put to screen. The production designers didn't even get a dedicated featurette. I was really bummed. Maybe someday we could get like a more special physical media release from A24 or Scream Factory, perhaps, or Arrow Video. Yes, I'm like begging a little bit. I'm not above that. But moving on, I do just want to briefly touch on the nightmare scene. This seems like a deeply intense moment, right? It's Annie subconsciously coming to grips with the fact that motherhood probably wasn't the best choice that she made for her life. Off camera, between every take, there were people coming in and dumping buckets of water on Toni and Alex, which was making them laugh and totally juxtaposing the moment. But the next scene I have to cover is the complete opposite. This scene involved extreme pain, both on and off camera, but I will just let Alex Wolff tell the story.
I said to Ari, and Ari can test this, I said like, hey, give me a real desk, let's do it. And he was like, I appreciate the commitment. You can probably sue me if I do that. Like that's not legal. He was like, we'll get you foam one. So then my impression was, okay, it'll be a nice soft foam one and it'll be easy. And then I came in and it was somewhere in between. I mean, it was like foam on the top, but it was hard on the bottom. And there was no other way except to put like blood on my nose and just slam my face on the desk. I did all day of stuff, like all the contortions. And I dislocated my jaw boxing a few years ago. So I dislocated my jaw for that scene. And I can do it. It hurts so much, but I dislocated it. There's barely any special effects, I think, in there because we glued my eye back and then just glued my lip up.
After that scene, I remember I had fake blood streaming down my whole, chin and my nose and all of my shirt, and then real blood gushing down my knee, and I couldn't walk because my ankles were all swollen because I launched back into the chair and everything was all bloody and messed up, so.
That's one dedicated son of a bitch. That was something I'd always wondered, how did they get his eyelid to stick up like that? How did they use effects to make his jaw look like that? Lo and behold, no effects. Alex Wolff's jaw can literally just do that. And he's 26 now, so he was 19 doing all of that stuff. It's insane. But I love that about the casting, that they cast actual teenagers as children in this movie. The horror genre is so notorious for casting 35-year-olds as teenagers, so this was kind of a breath of fresh air at the time. I was kind of saving the best crazy onset story for last, so now it is time to circle back to the question, does Ari Aster secretly hate horror films? Imagine the tinfoil hat. I'm putting it back on.
I mean, even just talking to him, the movies we were talking about, the first thing he said was, just so you know, I hate horror movies. I don't like most horror movies.
And I love the horror genre, and this is a horror movie, and I'm proud of that,
Yes,
so.
of course.
At the end of the day, do I really care if Ari Aster secretly hates the genre of horror? No. So we're just gonna put that down for the rest of the day. Did the question successfully keep people even a little bit more engaged in this video? I sure hope so. Thanks for playing the game. Kind of love when an artist has such conflicting opinions on a topic where they just kind of flip-flop back and forth for how they feel. Keep us confused, King. Whatever the case may be concerning his personal opinions, I think that his passion and his intent always shines through in his projects. Hereditary is a deeply thematically resonant film for many, so let's dive into some of those themes. We've already been over the inspirations. Obviously, this movie covers family tragedy, but let's move to a deeper level, starting with Annie. Through her character, we explore how we absorb the bullshit of our ancestors. Annie realizes that she's never really had agency in her life, which might explain her compulsion to recreate her traumas in miniature, sort of giving her control over them. And the fun thing about her character is that for a while, you don't know if she's unraveling an upsetting truth or if she's lost the plot completely. That's what Toni Collette said that she really enjoyed about the role. Similarly, messy is Peter's handling of things. He and Annie are sort of counterparts in this film. A lot of people express frustration with the fact that he immediately goes to bed after decapitating his sister. And don't get me wrong, when I was 18 watching the movie, I was frustrated by that. But now I find it really profound because I feel like in most horror movies, the characters just move on so quickly after somebody dies. Yeah, maybe you'll get a good scream in the moment, but then people aren't really that shaken up about 20 minutes later in a slasher, whereas in this movie, it lingers the entire time. Alex Wolff even said that it bothers him when characters know how to handle grief too cleanly. He was impressed with the script because as a teen character, he finally got to handle grief in a really messy way. That's also a huge question that this movie asks, is there any right way to handle grief? It's kicked off from the very beginning through the funeral and through Charlie. Millie made a great point where she said that people perceive Charlie as having a skewed moral compass, so they think that she's weird, but to Charlie, she thinks that she's acting normal because the compass is hers.
What about you? What gave you confidence in Ari and being able to do the film?
For me, it was when I first met Ari. When I first met him, I could just tell that he was a brilliant person and he was so nice, and usually the people that can create the most disturbing things are really nice. And when I met Ari for my audition, we talked about the script and he gave me a few notes, and that's when I knew that he understood people in a way that a lot of people don't. He knows that they are real in a way that a lot of movies don't really portray people as. A lot of the times they are characters and they're archetypes that are just there to have a good reaction from an audience. But he didn't want the audience to love the characters, and he wanted them to love them and hate them like you would a real person. You don't meet someone and you automatically just love them completely. You have things you don't like about anyone, and he really understood that about people, and he didn't want to make someone the perfect hero. He wanted them to be a real person.
You're great. It's great.
Jesus Christ, she's smart.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, people act really shocked when she's smart, and I get she's young, but I do feel like young people have a much better grip on the world than most other demographics. So, speaking of getting a grip, how did the actors recover after making a movie that featured panic attacks, beheadings, and cult worship? You like that segue? I have a whole dedicated section to the effects on the cast. Let's start with Toni Collette again. First, let me just say, she said that there were a ton of positives to working on this set. I've already mentioned some of them. She even compared Aster as a first-time director to Shyamalan when she worked on The Sixth Sense. She said that there was an air of something profound and special on set, which doesn't often happen. But the negative energy from working on this movie still caused her enough distress that she had to physically find a way to release it from her body. Yes, on the one hand, she said making this movie was healthy, like cleaning the kitchen for her, but she also did typically have to go on long runs after a shooting day to expel the bad juju. And unfortunately, she did have this to say during the press run.
Can you see yourself wanting to work more in horror, or do you see much more of a future for it?
I don't think
now?
this is a typical horror film, so, and I'm not a fan of horror films, so no would be the answer.
Can someone else just write a good enough script for her to come back to the horror genre again? Because Toni, I'm speaking for horror fans, we miss you. I don't think the movie scared off Alex and Millie though, because they don't seem deterred from the genre at all. Millie said the only part of making the film that disturbed her at all was the bird scene when she had to cut off its head. Not even her own beheading really got to her. She slept like a baby afterwards, remember? Alex described the movie as therapeutic and validating, because when else do you get to scream at your mom and then be congratulated for doing a good job afterwards?
Alex is somebody who, like, just throws himself kamikaze style into the part.
I thought if I was completely destroyed, then it was a good thing.
Love the dynamic of having one actor on set that's like, this is so taxing, I literally never want to do this again. And then having another one who's like, you know what? And if I died on that set, then I would forever be known in the same breath as my biggest cinematic achievement. Like, okay, love the commitment. But he maintained a good relationship with Ari after Hereditary, even calling him up for advice on his directorial debut. And I have no idea if they've remained in contact since then, but I would love to see them collaborate again. This is a total sidebar. Well, not really, because it still involves the effects of this movie on somebody, but making this film seemed to have a ripple effect on his brother Nat Wolff, who I always mix them up. Let's just hope that doesn't happen anymore, because now I've done so much research into Alex Wolff, but no promises, babes.
My brother was sitting next to me at the premiere, and he went like this and grabbed my leg like that. He just saw me like that. He just grabbed and just squeezed on my pants. I was like, get the hell off. I mean, he said to me, he was like, I don't even recognize your face in that movie. He's like, something about your face, there's just a life gone from whatever. I was like, well, sorry, dude.
None of my family is in show business. Unfortunately, I do not have Nepo baby privilege. And right now that feels like a good thing, because I don't want to know what it feels like to watch one of my siblings die violently in a horror film. Or he doesn't die in Hereditary, but he gets pretty tortured. Anyway, now we're getting into the release of this film, and something that I also didn't know before doing this deep dive is that the original cut of the film was 3 hours long. Aster considers the theatrical cut to be the definitive cut, whereas for Midsommar, when he was being asked to heavily trim it down, the entire time he was like, there's gonna need to be a director's cut released. There's no other way. The majority of what was cut out was just more family drama moments. Like he said, he got really caught up in those moments and forgot that he was making a horror film. One such instance of the drama being cut back was after the dinner table scene. Originally, it continued with Steve and Annie arguing, and then Steve going to console Peter. But now Aster prefers how he kind of left things hanging in the air after that scene. I prefer that too. It's always kind of delicious when there are a million unsaid things just floating in the atmosphere. All these technical choices added up left a huge impact on audiences. Starting at Sundance, it premiered at the festival on January 21st of 2018, then again at South by Southwest on March 11th. And around this time, when trailers were being shown to the public, something quite unfortunate happened, or well, unfortunate depending on how you look at it.
And I heard that trailer aired before Peter Rabbit, like the kids' film.
Yeah, apparently. I would think that these trailers would already be kind of pre-selected, and I don't know how that happened, but I love that it happened.
I was going to ask, how do you feel about it?
I mean, it's really good PR. Like, it's great.
I personally view that as hilarious, and I hope that it was a good character building moment for those children. Whether or not that was on purpose, I'm sure that it was a small part that contributed to the huge storm of buzz around this film. Remember, I included the clip of Toni at the very beginning where she said that she had never been a part of something with so much energy around it. Ari's hope for the audience was that they would be left with with the feelings of this film, that they wouldn't be able to shake them for a while. It had its wide release on June 8th of 2018. With a budget of $10 million, it went on to gross $87.8 million. That was a little bit of a shock. That seemed kind of low to me because I just remember literally everyone going to see that movie and talking about it. But then I used the inflation calculator, and today that would equate to $109.7 million worldwide, and that made a little bit more sense. That much inflation in 6 years, we truly do live in the worst timeline. But this movie sits at a 90% critical rating and 71% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. The Real Movie Heads on Letterboxd give it a 4.0 with over 2.2 million reviews. It also got the attention of one Martin Scorsese.
You know, I try to watch films. It's very hard sometimes to be able to find the time. And when you do something that stands out is amazing, you know, and this did. Wonderful filmmaking, really. Disturbing, there's no doubt. I mean, it's a horror film that way, but it's more than that. It reminds me of the best of the horror of the Val Lewton films and that sort of thing. I don't say it's made the same way, but it's elevated up to the Changeling, the Haunting, the Innocence.
I love Scorsese's review because he references the exact films that Aster said inspired him. Whether or not that's a conversation the two of them got to have beforehand, I don't know, but either way, that's kind of sick. I also dug up some 6-year-old reviews from some of our faves on YouTube. Unfortunately, I would not be producing content on YouTube for another 2.5 years, so I can't reference my old opinions. But I have reviews from Sarah Hawkinson, Cody Leach, and Chris Stuckman. I realize not a lot of diversity there, but I feel like for the first decade of YouTube, there were like 5 people talking about movies. Chris Stuckman gave the movie an A rating. He described it as being unpredictable at every turn, and that he has never seen a horror movie like that done with such skill.
I adore the way Aster directed this film. I think he has shown himself to be a master, and this is just his first feature.
Sarah said that because she is very sensitive, this movie caused her a lot of anxiety. She thought that horror fans would be more likely to understand the movie than regular audiences, but then she also said that she found the ending of the movie to be confusing. Regardless, she gave the movie an 8 out of 10. And I guess I underestimated how confusing general audiences found this movie because Cody Leach actually said something similar.
There's still a lot of things about this that has my wheels turning. I didn't even want to review this movie until 2 days after I saw it. I saw this actually opening night, that I'm just now getting my review out because I've been so unsure about what I like and what I don't like, what I understand and what I don't understand, and that's cool.
Ultimately, he said that it was a unique movie in a genre that he's very tired of. He recommended to manage your expectations and gave it a 3.5 out of 5. For some reason, I just do not remember those reactions to this movie. What do you remember about your initial reaction? I was only 18 and just remember feeling like I had never been more vindicated in my decision to attend film school that fall. I was like, oh yes, this is gonna be my life. Even though Ari Aster says that he doesn't think there's anything more worthless than a directing degree, but hey, I thought it was a perfect film when it came out. I was terrified, and I still love it almost just as much, but I think I've watched it one too many times at this point. I feel like I need to give myself like a decade and then watch it again to make it feel a little bit more fresh. I'm sure watching it as a mother is gonna be a whole new fresh type of horror. Then I think I'll really feel the themes about deconstructing the idealizations of motherhood. I can't wait. We're almost done here. I just thought that I would end off this video with Ari Aster's reactions to the reactions to this film. He was asked what people usually say when they come up to him about this film. He says that either they always want to know where the story came from, to which he doesn't really have an answer. They also really want to talk about the impact that it had on them, or there's the rare occasion where people try to give him tips on how it could have been scarier. My favorite reaction of his was his total surprise to what actually stuck with people from the movie.
The little girl, for instance, just that little tick, that noise, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats. I mean, where did that come from?
The fact that that's become such a thing has been sort of a surprise to me, because that was ultimately a device that it's a spoiler to explain why I needed that, but I did need some sort of auditory thing that, that we could bring back. It really was never actually designed to be something that was creepy or that stuck with people. It was just a very helpful device, especially in writing the script. That's just one of those really happy accidents.
I can't believe he didn't assume that people would obsess over that. It's the only thing that I can remember about the trailers. That, and that the trailers were cut to give us the perception that Charlie was gonna be the main character of the film. I wonder if this movie would have been as successful if the trailer wasn't cut as well as it was. I guess we'll never know. And that's all she wrote for Hereditary. Oh my god. Did you have fun? fun? Did you learn new things? I hope you did. I have lots of other deep dives on this channel, like I already mentioned. I have one for Midsommar, I have one for Beau is Afraid. So if you're interested in seeing more, don't worry, a playlist will pop up at the end of this video, or you can check out everything else that this channel has to offer. There are plenty of other types of deep dives, there are just regular reviews, there are rankings, whatever you want. You can check out my second channel where I post travel content and a lot about physical media, and you can check out my Patreon where there is a bonus video every single week depending on which tier you join. More than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video and that I catch you in the next one. Bye.